Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into, and that is my body recomp hierarchy. So I'm going to go over variables that I think are the most important for a body recomp. But first, before I do that, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. Again, I appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. Next, I have my free masterclass on body recomp and nutrition periodization. And both of those, I go in the body recomp one, I go over all the things that you need for a body recomp, how I go about them with my clients. And then for the nutrition periodization, I go over each nutrition phase, how to set it up, your macros, common mistakes, adjustments that you need to make if you're not seeing results. And again, the links to those are both in the show notes. Next, if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, and that's where I'm most active on social media. And again, I'm just a DM away. So if you have any questions, you can always just reach out to me there with that. All right. So I want to go over my hierarchy for a body recomp. And again, this is for gaining fat. Man, what a marketing pitch that would be, right? I can help you gain fat and lose muscle at the same time. I hope those. It's May 1st, so a month after April Fools. Anyways, body recomp, gaining muscle and losing body fat. You'll hear, people talk about body recomp as simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain. And that certainly is body recomp, right? That's, I think, how it got brought into the space. And I agree that is what it is, right? That's what you'll probably commonly hear, simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain. But to me, I've taken this a step further, and I think I have two types of body recomp. We have that body recomp, right? That short-term body recomp where you are simultaneously doing this. And then we have long-term body recomp, right? This is where over time, you're dropping body fat and building muscle over time, right? You're not necessarily doing it simultaneously, but over time, you are doing that, right? And this is typically done through, this is where we would switch you to nutrition periodization from that. So again, plug there to download that. So that's what it is, right? So I want to go over what are the most important variables for this to happen, again, in the short term and in the long term as well, too. And I made a post back in September 20th, 2023. So about, how many months ago was that? 10-ish months ago or so. And I've definitely, I had a different order then, and I wanted to change it just a little bit here. All right, let's dive into it. So here it is. So number one, this needs to be at the top of the priority list. In order to have a body recomp, if you're not doing this, you're not gonna be able to recomp, right? And that is weight training. This comes at number one because in order to maintain muscle, you need to weight train, right? You can have all the protein in the world. You could do all the cardio in the world. You could sleep as much as you want and get great sleep. You can manage your stress. You can have perfect nutrition. But if you're not weight training, you are not going to add muscle, right? If you don't have any resistance training into your routine and you're not over time telling your body to build more muscle, a body recomp just isn't going to happen, right? And so because of this, any body recomp requires maintaining or adding muscle. So making weight training priority number one. So again, this has to be in your routine if you're going to build muscle here in this process. And I can take this a step further in that not all weight training is going to be equal here in this, right? This is probably the biggest mistake I see people make is their weight training just is not geared towards building muscle, right? It's just, oh, hey, I'm lifting weights. And that's boom, I checked it off. And so, okay, that's a good starting point. That is going to check the boxes off initially. But again, if we want to really maximize our body recomp, we want to make our weight training hypertrophy oriented, right? So some common mistakes here are just doing like a ton of group classes, doing CrossFit style workouts, doing like powerlifting style workouts, like again, you're lifting weights and there's a weight training component to it, and you are seeing adaptation. So I think any exercise is great, and I don't want to poo-poo on any of those. But again, if we're trying to change our body, we need to be focused on hypertrophy style training, because I think some people will get upset that we say, hey, you really want to make sure your training is hypertrophy oriented. At least the most of it is, right? This doesn't mean that you can't do any of those things, but I would say 50 to 75% of your training, of your weight training, needs to be focused on hypertrophy. And if it's not, then just understand that you may be seeing some adaptations. And again, any exercise is great, but is that actually geared towards building muscles? Again, we want to make sure we're getting in enough volume. We want to make sure that we're training relatively close to failure. We want to make sure that we're overloading over time as well too, right? With that. So these are big things that we want to see from a muscle building standpoint. But again, if you're not sending that signal to build more muscle, it doesn't matter what you do. So that's why, and again, weight training specifically geared towards hypertrophy is the way to go. Like I said, this doesn't mean that you only have to do hypertrophy style training, but if 50 to 75% of it is not made up of that, you just have to understand that you're risking not having the greatest body recomp results. And if you're okay with that, then hey, that's fine too, right? Just for example, I have a couple clients that I do their nutrition and I make sure that's good. I obviously make sure they're weight training, but I'm not actively programming for them. They're doing their own thing. And we have these conversations of, okay, this is the trade-off that you're potentially making here, right? So again, I think that's the biggest thing here is understanding that. Okay, so this is where I started to make a change. So I previously had protein in at number 2, but I'm going to change this and I'm going to do energy balance. And the biggest reason is because if you're not in the correct energy balance for your goal, you will not see the body comp goals that you want. So again, if you're in a calorie surplus and you're trying to drop some body fat, it doesn't matter. You're not going to drop body fat. If you are to build as much muscle as possible and you're in a large deficit, it's not going to be great, right? So for a short-term body recomp, and again, this is where we're looking at simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain. A small deficit or maintenance is where you'll be, right? Because in a small deficit, we can still build some muscle and drop some body fat there, right? That's simultaneous. Or we could be at maintenance and be building some muscle and maybe seeing a little bit of body fat loss, right? At the very least, so you're not going to be gaining body fat. So that would be a short-term body recomp, right? Because you're dropping body fat percentage, but you're gaining muscle in that process. And then for a long-term body recomp, it's going to depend on the exact phase and goals here. Again, if we're in a fat loss phase and we're at maintenance or in surplus, you're not going to be dropping body fat there with that. So again, we need to make sure that our energy balance is in check there, right? So this means we need to manage your energy balance through nutrition, calories, macros, diet, quality, meal timing, et cetera, and overall movement to help with fat loss and muscle gain goals. Also making sure you're moving a certain amount to help you get into whatever energy balance you need to get into. So energy balance has jumped up to number 2 for me because I think it's super important there. Because again, if you're trying to drop body fat and build muscle at the same time, if you're in too large of an energy deficit, you're not going to be able to do that. You're just not going to put your body in the best position to do that. So that's why I moved it up to number 2. Now, so protein does fall down 1 from 2 to 3. And the biggest reason is because of you could have the perfect amount of protein, but if that energy balance is not there, you're eating too many calories, not enough calories, you're still going to impact your body composition at that point, right? So that's why I dropped it down to 3. However, protein is needed to build and maintain muscle after you send that signal to build more muscle, right? Through weight training. So protein is permissive in the sense that you can weight train, but then if your protein's super low, you're not really going to be maximizing muscle growth as well as you could, and you may be hurting it at that point, right? So we want to make sure protein is there for that. Protein can also help with satiety, which can help with energy balance as well too. I mentioned you could have as much protein as possible, but if you're not in the correct energy balance, it doesn't matter. And saying that, high amounts of protein can help you get into the energy balance you want because it can help you regulate your appetite better and it's more filling, right? So that's why protein now has gone down to number 3. It is super important, but to me, it's a little bit lower on the priority list than energy balance. And we want to be around 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight per day for that. Number 4 is sleep. So sleep comes in at number 4 because it directly and indirectly impacts so many things. Poor sleep impacts how much you can train and recover from, which could potentially lead to more muscle growth or less muscle growth. It can lead to lower energy expenditure because you just are tired, you don't want to move as much, which equals a higher risk of fat gain there with that because you're not moving as much. Higher risk of muscle loss in a calorie deficit, which equals a worse body composition. And I would say poor sleep, even in a small calorie surplus, is just going to lead to more fat gain, which is not going to be great from a body recomp standpoint. Poor sleep can impact hunger, which equals a higher risk of fat gain. It's very challenging for you to get into that proper energy balance because everything's shifting there with that. And then cognition, you're more likely to make poor decisions towards your body composition goals when you get poor sleep. You're more likely to give into tasty foods. Stress is going to be higher. You're less likely to push your weight training, right? So it's this trickle down effect here. So that's why sleep is very high on the priority list. Again, you don't need to sleep 10 to 12 hours a night, but we just want to make sure we're not completely missing out here on this, right? You're sleeping 3 hours a night. You're just super tired all the time. We need to look into that. And that's certainly going to impact your body recomposition. Number 5 is cardio training. Cardio training comes in at 5 because while it is very important for overall health and a body recomp specifically, it falls slightly lower on the priority list than the first 4. And when I say cardio, I'm specifically talking about exercise that builds your aerobic base and cardiovascular system. I'm not talking about cardio to burn calories. It's to build your aerobic base and cardiovascular system. This is going to help you out with obviously overall health. It's going to help you recover better in between. It's going to help you manage stress better. It is going to increase your energy expenditure, which is nice, but that's a little bit lower on the priority list. There's a ton of benefits of improving your aerobic base and cardiovascular fitness that can indirectly impact your body composition, right? It probably also makes you a little bit more insulin sensitive. Your body's better at handling carbs and fats as well too. Now, if improving your cardiovascular system is more important than a body recomp, then this would be higher on the priority list, right? But With body composition, it's going to fall a little bit lower. It's going to have a little bit more like indirect aspects to it. And then number 6 at the bottom is going to be supplements, right? Supplements come in at 6 and at the bottom because they have the smallest impact on body recomp. They can certainly help, but if the first 5 aren't taken care of, it really doesn't matter. So we want to make sure that we have all those in check, and then supplements can help, but they're lowest on the priority list. But a lot of times people that are like, oh, hey, what's the supplement I need to take? Do I need to take this supplement? Do I need to take that supplement? And it's, okay, what's your sleep like? Are you getting enough protein? And again, let's think about it, right? Supplements can help you with sleep. Supplements can help you hit your protein goal. So they do play a role, but it's more permissive and they fall lower on the list there with that. And again, so supplements can certainly help, but they're going to be lower, and that we need to make sure those first 5 things are in check there first. So that's my body recomp, my updated body recomp hierarchy here as of May 1st, 2024. I'm sure in 6 months, it may change again slightly, but I just want to continue to keep this updated because I think it's important. Again, this is based on clients' results, but this is also but it's also based on research as well too, right? Like, the most up-to-date research here, I'm taking all this into consideration with that. So that's where I currently fall with everything. Again, I think weight training will continue to be number 1, but I think from there we could see some of these change, and who knows, maybe I'll add in another variable at some point as well too there with that. So that is it for this episode. If you have any questions on how to find the right energy balance for you, how to improve your sleep, how much your protein needs to be, what your training needs to look like, then my free 30-minute strategy call is for you. In that call, we dive into your goals, where you want to go, and how we can best get you to those goals. The link to that is in the show notes.